Unfortunately, we've got to the Leeds game now. That was as many questions I had on Ruben Sellers. I feel like we need to get to it now. But yeah, let's have a chat about his opening fixture as manager officially up at Leeds United. Of course, also making his managerial debut in the opposition dugout was Javi Gracia. Ironically, his first ever game as Watford manager was against Saints in January 2018, but we managed to win that 1-0. So fast forward 5 years and he got his own back on us yesterday. Steve, not for the first time this season, a really poor day at the office and a major step backwards after that result at Chelsea last week.
Yeah, it was just limp. Leeds had energy. As to be fair, they've had most of the season. I said this when we were talking about potentially appointing Marsh, was that their performances under him were actually fine. It was literally the sort of binary stuff that happens at both ends of the pitch that they struggled with, and a lot of that is down to individuals. And Leeds were energetic. I mean, again, they didn't create huge chances. I mean, Bazunu's not been forced into a huge amount, but unfortunately, they've taken the one chance that slipped through, where I mean, Bednarek's basically made himself the size of his own heart, and Bazunu's not helped himself either. And yeah, as a result of that, we've ended up losing a game where it's one of those actually that, despite playing terribly for pretty much the whole game, we actually probably should have come out of it with a point, because other than that was not. They didn't really have an awful lot. It was a lot of energy and yeah, as Leeds have shown all season, not a huge amount of quality in the penalty area. So yeah, frustrating that we've let them score. Equally frustrating that despite their terrible defensive record, we've barely laid a glove on them. I don't think Meslier had a save to make in anger, really. No. So yeah, another bad day at the office. And I mean, you just look at the team lineup. I think when you saw it against Chelsea, everyone thought, "Oh God, what are we doing?" But actually, a lot of those picks kind of made sense in the context of playing a team that was likely to be attacking us and is full of quality in that part of the pitch. Leeds don't quite have that same sort of star appeal. They're a team that build a lot more through midfield and from the fullbacks, and yet we still stuck with the narrow formation. We still stuck with Elyounoussi, who's good, who's generally good against the better sides, but when we need to be a little bit more positive, he's found wanting. Stu Armstrong had an absolute shocker yesterday. And we're playing Sulemana as a striker, despite the fact I think he scored like 4 career goals. And yeah, it's kind of the same mistakes that Ralph was making earlier in the season, in terms of a lot of square pegs in round holes, wanting to play a certain system, come what may, regardless of relative strengths or weaknesses of the opposition and strengths and weaknesses of the players available. And yeah, just really frustrating. It just felt avoidable, really.
Glenn, I was going to come to you, but I'll hold that thought just because of the point Steve was making there. I can see our FPL SWAT here, just got back from Leeds, 2 poor sides, but we weren't good enough. Paul and Sulemana offered very little. Armstrong was off it, and Moy was poor, so that kind of backs up what you said there. Glenn, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Alfie, Phil Hay, who's the Athletics sort of Leeds version of Jacob, had tweeted on Wednesday, and I'm quoting this, part of Javi Gracia's presentation to Leeds included an analysis of Southampton's win over Chelsea last weekend, because he knew this Saturday's game at Ellen Road was crucial and make the job very well. Kind of building on what Steve said there, given we did play the same starting lineup against Chelsea as we did against Leeds, which I know hasn't happened very often and is probably understandable, did it kind of feel almost like that statement that Leeds were absolutely prepared for the way we were going to play, how to mitigate our sort of limited attacking threat, and nullified everything we tried at source?
Yeah, Jacob will be absolutely buzzing with that description of Phil Hay. By the way, yeah, it did a little bit. As Steve mentioned, I can fully understand why, as an interim manager, you then take your job, you win your big game, you get the job, you would then choose the same 11 players. I fully understand that, and I was all behind that. But I said at the time, you have to then show different strengths. The idea that the game that Moy Elyounoussi and Stuart Armstrong played, I couldn't tell you what they did, really. I couldn't tell you what they did, and clearly they knew how to mark Paul Onuachu. You know, he had a really good game against Chelsea, won everything. I don't think he won a single thing on Saturday yesterday. So clearly they'd worked on it, and yeah, you just felt that at no point in that game were Southampton in it. And at the end, full time, so many statistics came out. It's not just about one game. It's not just about this issue. It's, they've scored no more than 2 goals in any Premier League game this season. They've lost, I think, 10 games by 1 goal, which actually we spoke to Ruben Sellers about, and he said that it's a mark of the fact they're in the game. But it's all well and good being in the game, and that is a philosophy that I do agree with.
Are we in the game?
Yeah. No, it's a philosophy I agree with. If you're a goal out or you're 0-0, then you are in the game. You have a chance. But if you don't ever offering anything, then what's the point? They're never going to score yesterday. They were never going to score.
Scored 19 and 24. So sides know that they can just get 1 goal against us and then sit back.
Yeah, and we'll always throw one in.
And this is the thing: if you can't keep 2 clean sheets, the fewest in the Premier League, if you can't keep a clean sheet and you can't score a goal, the whole idea of going and trying to get a 0-0 and staying in the game and doing what Ralph Hasenhüttl did at the start of the season, which is trying to edge games at the end, is never going to work because you've already chucked it by then. So I just felt that perhaps there was a little bit of a reset needed, a bit of a look at Leeds. They hadn't won since November. Go to Ellen Road. The crowd were nervy. They were frustrated. The referee started giving decisions Southampton's way, and the crowd were getting on him, and they weren't happy. You just attack, and you have a chance, but they never looked like doing anything yesterday.
And that's led me nicely into Glen's question. So thanks, Alfie. This is seamless tonight. Honestly, it's like a bunch of professionals. Because Glen, I was going to say, I mean, we were talking just briefly before we came on air. I saw a couple of journalists, not necessarily local journalists, even national media ones, saying that it felt like Saints had pretty much tried to settle on a draw from the off and try and pinch anything they could, set pieces. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, because as Alfie said there, I mean, Leeds obviously were up for it. The fans were up for it, but likewise, you knew that they were probably vulnerable as well if you could take the games to them. And it's hard to sort of get back into a game when you're behind, but it was just that toothless attacking again that was really frustrating.
It's the approach that we've had 3 managers this season, and there are 3 games that stand out for me. Villa away, they hadn't won for something like 9 games, and Gerrard got sacked virtually straight afterwards. We went to that. Ralph took us to that one. Nathan Jones against Nottingham Forest at home, when they had scored 1 away goal all season, and Ruben Sellers at Leeds. So it's 3 different managers, 3 different opponents, all on dreadful runs. We've lost every game 1-0, and we've set up not to lose every one of those sort of 6-pointer games. So we've set up not to lose with a team that can't keep clean sheets, and we've offered no attacking threat. And against Leeds, we pick Sulemana and Onuachu because they're our best 2 strikers, low bar, admittedly. And we let the goal in 78 minutes, and we're left with Elyounoussi, Theo Walcott, Sekou Mara, and we've pushed James Ward-Prowse forward. It was so disappointing. And, Alfie made a point about, Ruben Sellers. You can understand him because it's his second game as caretaker manager. I don't care. He hasn't got time. He hasn't got time to learn on the job. He's got to make positive decisions straight away. As soon as I saw it was the same lineup as Chelsea, I was thinking this is a completely different assignment. As Steve said, Chelsea are a team. Yeah, they're in a spot of bother at the moment, but they're packed with good individuals. So what you have to do is, you have to keep the space tight and make them try and combine, and that's a good way to play against that Chelsea team. This Leeds team and the Villa team and the Forest team, you've got to, they're down on their luck. They're really down on confidence. They're not very good. You've got to go at them. I mean, I thought Leeds were dreadful, to be honest. Yes, as Steve said, high energy. I thought they were dreadful. It should have been a 0-0 draw, even regardless of how bad we are. And I would say Leeds will go down. They'll be down there with us and Bournemouth at the end of the season.
Keep the comments lively.
Everton will be thereabouts as well. But yeah, it was just so poor. And again, Steve touched on this. We've signed Suleiman and we're playing him as a striker. Really? He had a good game against Wolves, didn't he? And he looked dangerous in that one. But and when we signed Paul Onuachu, he is what he is. He's a 6'7" striker. Strikers that big aren't going to be quick. We've got to play to his strengths. He's not going to adapt and play. And, he's not suddenly going to be dropping deep and picking up the ball in the number 10 position, and turning around and running at defenders. That's not his game. How many crosses did we get in from the wide positions? I counted 2. and they were both crap, straight miles over his head. One from Perro, one from Ward-Prowse, of all people. Just how difficult is it to hit a 6'7" striker? It's like kicking a ball at a lighthouse, for God's sake.
I think we've picked him out with one cross in 3.5 games.
Yeah, against Chelsea.
One against Chelsea.
And they nearly went in.
Yeah.
Won that berth.
Yeah. So you've signed this guy, so play to his strengths. Get some people down the line to get crosses in, be it the fullbacks or the wide players. But Elyounoussi and Armstrong were both awful, as we've discussed. Maitland-Niles had a good game against Chelsea, but reverted to type yesterday. We've got Kyle Walker-Peters sat on the bench, easily our best fullback. Get him on the pitch on the right hand side, and then we might actually get something going forward.
We took Perro off again.
Yeah, left Maitland-Niles on. Unbelievable. And and then he contributed to the. He was one of the dopey defenders wandering over to whoever it was out on the wing. When the goal went in, and it's just too many players in that team have the odd good game. And we kind of think, maybe they've turned a corner. I mean, Bazunu is one. Bednarek had a half-decent game last week against Chelsea. And there were times against Leeds where I thought, he got up close to Bamford a couple of times. But then when you look at the double mistake where he tried to give a goal away in the first half, and I think there were 2 mistakes by him in the goal. You can't rely on him to have any period of time in the team without dropping something horrendous. So I thought it was a very, very bad day for Ruben Selles, and he has got to learn quickly. Otherwise, as discussed, his record is not going to look terribly good at the end of the season.
I can see Ellie here saying, so tired of players not giving 100%. You could tell which team cared the most from minute one. Spoiler, it wasn't us. Steve, I saw Jacob had said he watched the whole game back today, which I thought, blimey, that's a good effort. But I started watching the goal and trying to make notes on sort of all the errors in the goal, Steve, and I think my pen ran out of ink in the end. But kind of talk us through it from your point of view as a Saints fan. I mean, it's just at Premier League level, it's just sort of shambolic after shambolic error, really.
That was just basics. The fact that you got one guy in the corner who's basically the only ambition he has at that point when he gets the ball is, okay, can I win a corner here? And we've somehow contrived to let him pass the ball through 3 of us and give another of his teammates a free run into the penalty area, because Maitland-Niles had got himself the wrong side, so he couldn't put the challenge in. Otherwise, it would have been a guaranteed penalty. But even from then, if Bednarek takes 1 step forward, then he probably just blocks the shot and we get away with it, because it was a terrible shot, which you would expect from a left back who's never scored
on his right foot.
Yeah, on his weaker foot. You got a left back who most Leeds fans would say shouldn't be anywhere near their team, and yet we've let him scuff one in, and all of a sudden he's now the hero. And we've somehow managed to gift them a goal. I mean, I would imagine the point at which that ball crosses the line, it must have been on the ground in dead centre of the goal. And somehow we've let a P roller just
going at 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's just pathetic.
The Leeds reporters at Ellen Road were absolutely bamboozled that Junior Firpo scored a goal. They couldn't believe what they'd seen.
Well, it sums it all up, really, doesn't it? But I saw Barry here, and Barry, just for the record, we were talking about this before we came on air. The goal was a catalogue of errors, but very few seem to have noticed that Walcott didn't track back to get Firpo, and we were just talking about that before we came on air. The fact that there's 3 of them out there in the corner flag, one being him, and he sort of ends up marking no one as Firpo runs past him. I suppose that's the thing, Alfie, isn't it? Really, it's not just the goals they're letting in, but the fact that I think, as tweeted out on the social media last night, that's now Everton at home. They've lost to Wolves home and away. Forest, they obviously lost to Leeds away. They're losing to teams around them, and ultimately, probably at the end of the season, as you guys have been chatting about for the last few weeks, it's not winning or losing at Chelsea that's going to make the difference. It's these games that are going to be the deciders.
Yeah, that'll be the difference. And I think the biggest problem that these players and Ruben Selles and everybody at the club will face now is that there's quite clearly a culture of fear that has invaded, and maybe it's even at the higher reaches of the club as well. Maybe they're scared too, because Ralph Hasenhüttl's biggest downfall was fear. He stopped playing the way he wanted to play, stopped playing the way he should play, because he was too scared of losing his job, too scared of losing matches. They didn't find a way to stop losing matches. Nathan Jones was just scared of the job from the first place. he was never going to instill confidence in the players. And I look, you mentioned, they played the team that are 19th, I think, 3 times. They've lost 1-0 every single time. But they beat Chelsea. They'll beat Chelsea twice. They beat Everton, give them that. But when 2 bad teams play each other, 50% chance you win. And they did win that one, so fair play. But whenever the big moment comes, they give themselves a platform. The big moment comes and they're scared. And those sort of errors only happen when you're afraid. For me, it's not concentration. They are trying. There's 100% effort there. I fully believe that. You look at the team, it's 11 decent players, with the exception of maybe a couple that you probably wouldn't have in your first team. But the players individually are good. So why are they by far and away the worst team in the league? It's because they're too afraid to play.
Yeah. In terms of consistency, I can see Nipper R here. As a Leeds fan, as I saw it, we were all over you in the second half, but you're right, both sides were poor. The problem we have is we can't finish. Glenn, look, we do try to find positives on the podcast. I know it's easier said than done sometimes, and I feel, in Martin's absence, I want to try and be positive. But does it feel like the writing's on the wall? I mean, I don't want to use the R word, but I mean, was yesterday? I think we used season defining yesterday, didn't we? I mean, is that the end? Do you think?
Well, for those of you who are old enough to remember when we got relegated in 2005, there's so many parallels with this season, right? 3 managers for one thing, and not winning any of the games against the teams in the bottom half. And we're doing exactly the same thing. We also, probably coincidentally, have ended up with a similar problem in that both in 2005 and now, we've got about 31 players in the first team squad. Well over half of them aren't good enough. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of similarities, and a rough guess, we probably need to win at least 5, probably 6 games out of the remaining 14. And
that's a 30 of fixtures then.
Yeah, I thought that at some point we're going to have to win sort of 3 games in a row, or win 2 and get a draw, at least go unbeaten for a few games. And obviously time is running out, and I thought this is an ideal opportunity to go to Leeds, make a bit of a statement. And I thought if we'd won at Leeds, we would have had a genuine chance of keeping out of it. Because, we got fixtures coming up against Man United, Man City. I think Arsenal are coming up fairly soon as well. So the fixtures, and as we touched on, we beat Chelsea, but they're a bit of a special case this season, aren't they? Because they're a bit of a shambles. They're just sort of throwing players at the wall with a manager who's not really doesn't really seem comfortable there. So will we get a result against any of the big teams? I don't know. I mean, I'd say it was certainly a lot easier to get a result against Leeds than it will be against Manchester City or Manchester United in a couple of weeks' time. So it's a bit of a mystery it's a bit of a miracle actually that we're still in touch, because for me we deserve to be 10 points adrift. It's so
there's that many and that's terrible the one teams.
Someone could stay up this year. Yeah, someone could stay up this year with like 33 points or something like that. But we don't deserve to stay up. We don't deserve to get out of the bottom 3. And performances like yesterday and those other ones I mentioned earlier, they're the reason why. We just don't look like we've got it in us. But I still believe there's a half decent side.
There is a half. There are players there that other teams in the Premier League will lick their lips when they get to pick them apart in the summer.
Yeah, but we've got to let the handbrake off in some of in these games against the teams who are not in the not top of the table sides. We've got to let the handbrake off and have Suleiman on one wing, Edozie on the other wing, whatever. Okay, so maybe they're not the best defensively, but let's go. Let's get Che Adams up front with Paul and see what happens. Let's get Alcaraz in the team somewhere. He's a player who's got a goal in him. So he scored the goal in that game and he hasn't played since. Yeah. It just seems mental the way we seem so frightened of putting the flair players in the team. You got to have at least 4 players, in my view, who are going to pose some sort of attacking threat at the other end of at the front end of the pitch. Otherwise, we're just going to carry on like this, losing games 1-0, and that'll be the end of that.
Yeah, I can see Ben here saying, I still have hope. Just every game from now till the end of the season is massive. But if we manage a win against Leicester and some of the other games go for us, which is kind of what you guys were alluding to there around points, then I feel much better. Steve, just briefly before we go on to chat about Grimsby, do you agree with Glenn, or do you see any hope?
I mean, at the end of the day, while it's mathematically
Yeah.
still available,
Yeah.
then I mean, there's still hope. But I mean, we have demonstrated on occasion this season that we can string a performance together, but we've got to help ourselves, and that comes with, as Glen says, team selections. The team selection has got to be to fit the opponent. You've got to be kind of set up in a way that you're able to hurt these teams. And as we said, going with the same lineup for Chelsea away compared to Leeds away, when we've got so many different players who can do so many different things, whose strengths and weaknesses are so varied, it was lunacy. Absolutely no way that we should be setting up in that sort of low block but theoretically high energy setup. And that, I mean, that's one complete difference as well, in that we set up the same 11 yesterday compared to last Saturday. Away at Chelsea, first hour or so, we were really energetic, pressing high and winning the ball quite often in their half and causing them problems on the turnovers. I mean, we won the ball off them in their half, twice, I think, yesterday. Barely posed a threat for them against a fan base that was obviously nervous. Would have got pretty riled up if we'd scored, I suspect. Because at the end of the day, Leeds fans, I mean, Leeds are a big, decent sized club, and they will understandably have sort of feelings that they should be better than us and should be turning us over, given that we're bottom of the table and can barely buy a win from anywhere. So we've not helped ourselves, and so much of this has been completely self-inflicted, whether it's been actually on the pitch in the 90 minutes or off it with team selections, tactics, sort of work on the training ground, and I mean, obviously for the previous 3 months, managerial appointment.